So let's start then. So today we will talk about the modern English literature. That is a lecture 5 material. So the modern English literature, if you are ready, let's start. So the modern English literature comprises the centuries, the end of the 20th and the beginning of the 21st century. It is considered the modern English literature. So what changes happened at that period and how was it reflected in literature? We'll talk about these issues today. So in the period between the end of the 20th and the beginning of the 21st century, in England, there was a transition from industrial to the informatic technological civilization. You should know from the previous lectures that in the 19th century, industrialization of England began. As a result of that change, many factories and plants were opened and developed, and it influenced the lives of common people also. As if you remember from the period of Romanticism, there was a poetic group of poets named Lake Poets. So they called their group Lake Poets because of the lake district they lived in. So they lived and created in the Lake District, which was in the southeastern part of London. And they went to this district to escape from the industrialization because they didn't like it. So, in the 20th century, industrialization continued developing, and it is now very close to us, to our era, that is the epoch of the information technology. So as a result of the development of information technologies, mass media penetrates all spheres of social life. So you know what is mass media, right? And you understand the importance and the strong influence of the mass media to all spheres of civilization, to all spheres of social life. So journalism was developed much, television and also internet had and is having its impact on the social life of all people all over the world. So as a result of the penetrating of mass media, new voices came from Canada, New Zealand, India, the Caribbean, and Africa. That means that people and citizens of other countries started writing in the English language also, and the literary work that was written in the English language anyway is considered the literary piece of the English literature. And now we will talk about some literary genres that developed and were popular at that period, starting with poetry. So we will compare poetry with the poetry of previous ages. Okay, if there are some problems with the image and the sound, you will tell me, okay?
Okay.
So poetry, poets made radically new experience in poetry. So they looked back to the 17th century metaphysical poetry for technical inspiration. First of all, metaphysical poetry, it was a type of poetry that developed in the 17th century. And I can explain such poetry with quite one expression, one definition. Metaphysical means beyond reality. it's not reality that was described in the metaphysical poetry. Something connected with human psychology, with universe. So abstract notions were described, abstract things were written about in such metaphysical poetry. And in the poetry of the modern period, writers looked for the technical inspiration. They learned the techniques of writing such poetry and used these techniques in their own poetry creation. Besides that period, poetry became more and more diverse. It means, when we say diverse, we mean that, again, representatives of different cultures and different countries started writing and started creating poems in the English language. That's why it is called diverse. So if we talk about fiction, also there were huge changes which happened at that period. For example, starting from 1900 up to 1920s, the following characteristic features of fiction can be listed here as experimentation, elusiveness, and complexity. So these features are characteristic of the fiction of the modern period. In the years between 1930, 1940, and 1950, novelists returned to the social realism. Social realism developed and was formed in the 19th century. And if you remember from the previous lesson, when we talked about Charles Dickens, Jane Austen, Charlotte Bronte, so they are representatives of social realism. Social comes from the word society, you know, and realism, that is realism. So everything in the literary realism is described realistically. So society depicted realistically. So again, in the modern English literature, writers went back to social realism. When we come to the post-1960s, we should say that important writers emerged from post-colonial context. At the previous lesson, I've told you about anti-colonial novel. Do you remember? I guess A group asked me to talk about literature the previous lesson. So I've mentioned anti-colonial novel. So in the modernist period also, anti-colonial issues were again described and talked again. So if we look at drama of that period, so you know that drama, it is a theater, right? And drama are plays and theater, everything connected with theater. So in 1968, there was a very important event in the world of the theater, in the world of drama. So it is the abolition of the Theatres Act. And according to this act, according to the Theatres Act, all plays from that time were to be submitted to and censored by the state. So it means that after the abolition of the Theatres Act, plays were not only of a good quantity, of a high quantity, but also of a good quality because they were censored by state. So as a result of this abolition, there appeared a newly liberated theater, new type of theater. And besides, there were formed many theater groups, including actors, writers, and directors working collaboratively. So many theater groups appeared. For example, if a good playwright or a good organizer decided to organize and create some theatrical group, so they could gather all talented writers or playwrights or actors, etc. So they could organize such a theater group and they work together collaboratively. Not without profit, of course. And at the same period, in the 20th century, neo-Victorian literature developed. So first of all, let's analyze the Victorian literature. Let's revise this term. So you know that Victorian literature refers to the literature that was produced during the reign of the Queen Victoria, right? Period which coincides with the reign of Queen Victoria is named Victorian literature, Victorian period, Victorian age, and so on. So, and in the 20th century also, in the modern English literature period, writers went back again to the Victorian literature, but this time it was different. To some extent, it was different from the Victorian literature. So if I say, for example, if I list some works by famous writers as Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen again, and other works by Jane Austen, Jane Eyre, as you have watched together with me the previous lesson, it also refers to the Victorian literature. You can understand, you can realize, you can have a clear picture of the Victorian literature and the Victorian society. So, what is the difference between Victorian and neo-Victorian literature then? So, Victorian novel emerged in the postmodern form. What does it mean? Victorian writers or fictional characters are placed in entirely new literary settings. So, characters are the same as they were in the Victorian period, but the settings are quite different, maybe sometimes non-realistic or futuristic and so on. So that is a difference between neo-Victorian and Victorian. And here are representatives of the neo-Victorian literature. So John Fowles, Byatt, Antonia Byatt, James Rice, Peter Ackroyd, Charles Palliser, and others. So I think that you will talk about them at your seminar lesson tomorrow. And now I will just list these names, okay? And what is important and what is the most interesting part of this lecture is the development of fantasy. Do you remember the last time we spoke about fantasy? So it was the end of the 19th century when we talked about Herbert Wells, including such works by him as Time Machine and Invisible Man, War of the Worlds. Do you remember?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so and in the 20th century, a new type of fantasy developed, and it is very close to you, and it is very interesting for you, I think. So now you speak. What do you know? What does this picture represent, and what do you know about it? So what does this picture represent?
It is a series of films, adventurous films about hobbits who travel around the world in order to get their home back.
By Peter Jackson.
Peter Jackson, what?
Yes.
Tolkien.
Yeah.
So it is a movie, right? It is a movie, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
This picture, the same picture is from the movie about Hobbit. And so now you know that it is a novel. It is a series of novels written by an English author. And do you know by whom?
By Tolkien?
Tolkien. Right, you are. So this picture is again from the same movie. And so the writer of this series is John Ronald Tolkien. Besides The Hobbit, he wrote Lord of the Rings, Silmarillion, and other works. And so here is his photo. Have you ever imagined the person who created such a masterpiece?
No.
There is a film about him.
Mm-hmm. So use it
About his
tomorrow.
biography.
Use it tomorrow for your seminar presentation. Okay.
Mhm.
So next one.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter, of course, everybody knows, even children and adults, Harry Potter. And it is also from the movie, right? The picture is
Yes.
from the movie. And who is the author?
Rowling, J.K.
Mhm. Do you know the full name?
Joanna Caitlin. Şunu mana? Joanna Caitlin Rowling.
Mhm. John Rowling. So many novels, so many stories written, created by Rowling. And she's herself such a pretty lady. What about this one? What?
Narnia mı?
Yes,
Narnia.
it is Narnia, right, Siwa? And did you know that it also refers to the English literature?
No.
So it does, it refers, it is a word written by English writer. Clive Staples Lewis. This person created such fantastic novels. The Chronicles of Narnia, Mere Christianity, Screwtape Letters, The Problem of Pain, The Four Loves. So you should know that the list of works I have presented here is not a full list, and you will yourself discover all works by these writers of fantasy. So so now we will stop talking about fantasy of that period, because you yourself know better than me about these works. I think no need of talking about them any longer. Instead, we will continue talking about the bands, about the bands of poets called the Liverpool Poets. They were called the Liverpool Poets because they lived in Liverpool. So it is a band, again, I will repeat, of Liverpool poets from Liverpool. So they are Adrian Henry, Roger McGough, and Brian Patton. Have you ever heard these names?
No.
So together they work in collaboration. They work together. So it is a band. So they wrote. They created poems and songs to these poems, such as collection of poems, the Merseyside, the Liverpool Scene, and New Volume. So they created poems and sang in different genres, such as pop music, urban, and good humored music and poetry. So they were very influential and they were very famous. Even nowadays, not your generation, but older, know this band very well. Vocal also. And now it's a turn to speak about women writers of new generation. For one of the representatives of the modern English literature is Kate Atkinson. So Her first novel, which is titled Behind the Scenes at the Museum, is considered the bestseller. It was a 1995 bestseller, according to Sunday Times. Besides this novel, she also wrote 9 other novels, 1 play, 1 collection of short stories. One more woman representative is Margaret Drabble. So here are the list of some of her works. A Summer Birdcage, The Garret Year, The Rare Elms of Gold, The Ice Age, The Middle Ground, The Radiant Way. And her characteristic feature of her creative work is that she described middle-class women, and she described them realistically. And her works are considered almost autobiographical studies or conflicts. So she herself led a very difficult life, full of sufferings, and her sufferings and experiences are described in her works. And she mainly wrote about young women experiencing their careers, marriages, and family lives. One more woman writer of the modern English literature is Susan Hill. And she wrote mainly psychological fiction. And in 1972, she was elected a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. So she was a very influential person in the world of literature. And her works are such as Do Me a Favor, Gentlemen and Ladies, A Change for the Better, I'm the King of the Castle, Strange Meeting, The Bird of Night, In the Springtime of the Year, and many others are also very famous all over the world. Maybe not all over the world, but in England, in Europe, and her works also influenced the creative work of other contemporary writers. So before starting talking about Nobel Prize laureates in the English literature, first of all, let's define what is a Nobel Prize itself. What is a Nobel Prize? Please, could you speak louder? Who knows what is a Nobel Prize and why and how it is awarded to people?
So it's a kind of prize which is given for special work, for example, in spheres of literature and other spheres, I think, except mathematics, if I'm not mistaken.
Why
Yes.
not mathematics?
Because this person, Nobel's wife, has a lover who was a
Mathematician. Yes, according to them.
Yeah, mathematician.
Story, yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
Well, and what kind of prize is it? What kind of prize is it? Who knows?
Money?
Yeah, money.
Yes,
It's
great amount of money. Not only money, but also medal, golden medal also. Then a
It's a
certificate,
kind of coin.
like a diploma. And so it is. It was established by whom?
By Isaac Nobel.
By Alfred Nobel. So it was established by Alfred Nobel, and it is awarded in different. It is awarded for different contributions in different spheres, besides mathematics. And maybe it is because of the story retold by Reyhan. According to the story, so Alfred Nobel's beloved rejected him and ran away with another man. So, где у меня? Извиняюсь, где у меня демонстрация? So that's why he wouldn't like to share his prize for the achievements in mathematics. So the first Nobel Prize winner was, who is he? Do you remember? Who is he from the previous lecture? It is Kipling. Kipling.
Who was written Mowgli?
Yes, Jungle Book, we say, okay, not Mowgli. Jungle Book. So he was the first person in the English literature that was awarded the Nobel Prize, and it was in 1907. And please remember that the Nobel Prize is awarded not only for one literary work, not only for one novel, but for the whole creative activity of writers. Next one is John Goldsworthy. So who is he? Goldsworthy. The author of the work The Farsight Saga. Сага о Форсайтах мы говорили на прошлом уроке. Сага о Форсайтах, помните? So he was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1932. Next one is Eliot, Thomas Stern Eliot. So he was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1948. Bertrand Russell, for his achievements, for his contribution in the sphere of philosophy, philosophical literature, he was awarded. Next one is, do you know this person?
Churchill.
Yes, right, you are. It is Winston Churchill. He was not only politician, but also author. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1943, and he mainly wrote about economical issues in literature. William Golding is one more Nobel Prize winner. He was awarded in 1983. And you should remember him by the work Lord of the Flies, Повелитель мух. Я вам рассказывала на прошлом уроке. Повелитель мух. So he was also awarded the Nobel Prize. Harold Pinter is the next Nobel Prize laureate. So he was awarded in 2005. And now you yourself will find out the other laureates of the Nobel Prize in the English literature, okay? So I have stopped that in the year 2005, and you will continue the list. Agreed? Doris Lessing Barakyanina, Doris Lessing, one more laureate. So she was awarded in 2007. You will continue the list, okay? And now I will talk about two notions. We will compare and define two notions that which are English literature and literature in English. How do you understand these terms? What is the difference between English literature and literature in English? Who can explain? So we don't have much time. So English literature is the literature written in Great Britain and British colonies. It is written in the English literature, and it reflects the English culture. In comparison with it, literature in English are works from all over the world written in any other language, not English. They are written in any other languages and then translated into the English language. And this literature in English reflects diverse cultures because different countries' representatives create their works in, for example, if it is a literary work created in the Uzbek language and then translated into the English, it is literature in English. So besides the 20th century, multicultural literature appeared. And here are some representatives of the multicultural literature. Kazuo Ishiguro, for example, Sir Ahmad Salman Rushdie, and Hanif Kureishi. So some of their works are Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie, and My Beautiful Laundry by Hanif Kureishi. So at home, for tomorrow, you will explore their creative work and talk about them because we have less time left. So that's it. And we will now watch. Так, минуточку. We will now watch a short video about Kazuo Ishiguro and his work, Never Let Me Go. Так, минуточку. Что у нас там получается? Видно вам теперь видео?
Да, видно.
Видно.
No.
Время слайд. Может, идем.
Eerie and so disturbing until about halfway through, you still really have no sense of what's going on. You just know there's something wrong.
No one said anything about this. No one said anything about a locked gate.
The story that he's told within this book is the story of humanity and a story of lost humanity and how necessary it is to be humane to your fellow man.
I'd like you to forgive me. It asks very difficult questions. It isn't comfortable. Yet it is also very, so really beautiful and makes you think. And I think that's actually quite rare.
There's two British novelists who are very aware of having been influenced by. One of them is J.G. Ballard, the other one is Kazuo Ishiguro. And for a heavyweight literary novelist, which he is, his Booker Prize winning Big Shot, it's a real deal. It's very approachable, it's very unassuming.
He really kindly gave us all signed first editions of the book as a start present, which was lovely. You know, I mean, I'd read Remains of the Day before anyway, and loved the film of that as well, actually. And I think his writing is beautiful. You know, it's so simple. It's not simple, but it seems like every word he's chosen is the perfect word.
Times over the years that I've told myself I shouldn't look back so much. There came the point when I just stopped resisting. I arrived in Japan as a 5-year-old in 1960. My father was a scientist working for the British government at that time. And I didn't start to write fiction until relatively late. I had for many years great aspirations to be a singer-songwriter. And I did this whole thing of trying to become part of the music scene and failed miserably. But at a certain point in my life, around that age, early 20s, I made the transition from writing songs to writing stories, and it felt very natural. Often I read a book going, well, could this be a film? And I didn't think about that as I read the book, because I was so wrapped up in the story. Then I started wondering